To everyone who's ever told anyone with a dream they can't, this video's for you.
Over 11 million subscribers on YouTube and videos with up to 70 million views, Casey Neistat is an online sensation. But success wasn't always the norm for this internet celebrity. Neistat dropped out of school and never graduated. But he was able to turn his creativity into a lucrative online business. Casey, one of the first videos that I watched from you was Do What You Can't, where you basically tell people that they should go for things that people tell them they can't do. And I was thinking that's the story of your life, if I think of your upbringings.
Yeah, I think that's very much so the story of my life, both personally and professionally. I think a lot of the creative aspects of my own career were me sort of pushing back at sort of the voices and the forces in my life that had said, maybe that's not the best course of action, maybe that's not the best career for you to pursue. So it was me sort of pushing through that inspired a lot of the ideas that are in that video.
And what made you then to go for it? Was it the lack of opportunities, as you mentioned here?
Yeah, and that's primarily what I was talking about today is that, now I'm, almost a 40-year-old guy and I've got a family, and in maturity I've been able to look back at my career, and I think that a lot of what I've done in my career has been out of necessity. I haven't had options, and the lack of options has turned out to be a kind of a virtuous path for me because it's forced me to assume risks that I may have otherwise overlooked.
And now you're a bit more cautious.
Well, I think that's the irony of it all, is that like when you do get older, you do find some success in your life in any capacity, it makes you a lot less willing to assume further risks because I don't want to jeopardize what I have. So now I find myself pushing back against a whole bunch of other forces that maybe I see as resistance towards creative endeavors or career pursuits.
So now you have more to lose. You created this empire, this brand, Casey Neistat, as well through YouTube. You had the HBO series. How does the business model of YouTube work? How did that all come about?
Well, the business model of YouTube now is something that's fairly established. There is a path right now that makes sense. And I'm one of a handful of YouTubers who sort of came up while that was being developed, while the sort of the influencer economy was coming to maturity.
You're one of the pioneers.
Yeah, I'm an old man in this game now. My peers that really are thriving on YouTube and in the world of social media, they're all typically very young. But the economy of YouTube, or the influencer economy, is a multifaceted one. And I think that, at its core, there is YouTube, which is a intrinsically monetizable platform. You can put ads in front of your content. You get paid for those. Not very interesting.
Why?
Because it is a way to make money, but ultimately you're functioning as sort of a tool within this larger ecosystem of YouTube. You don't have the kind of agency for monetizing your content the way you do in other facets of your career. And what I mean by that specifically is you see now a lot of bigger YouTubers selling merchandise and making considerable income doing that. And then you even see some of the more forward-thinking creators. I'm thinking of Shane Dawson or Jeffree Star. They're coming out with their own makeup lines. And I think I read a staggering number that was like in the first hour of sales, they did $20 million of sales from their new makeup line that came out in an hour. That is profound. And I think that is just one of the many facets that influencers, individuals that have some degree of influence, are able to capitalize on in this new economy.
So it's more like you have a YouTube channel and you gain fame, and through that, then you can use it for other.
Well, I think if that's sort of your native platform, I think the beauty of the influencer economy is you can sort of come up almost anywhere. A lot of the bigger YouTubers we're seeing now, they were originally big on a platform called Vine, which is long
doesn't exist anymore.
That's right. And now,
so what do they do?
Well, now there's TikTok, which is a Chinese-owned social media platform where you make short videos. And you're seeing individuals on there that are doing views in the hundreds of millions. And that's a product that's in its infancy compared to, an older platform like YouTube. But what's at its core, what's universal here is that individuals leverage these platforms and gain influence, and then they're able to monetize that influence in one of myriad ways. And that is sort of the economy of an influencer in a nutshell.
Okay. YouTube stopped running some advertisement alongside some videos I read an article by the Washington Post that some saw their income through YouTube advertisement fall by 80%. It happened to you as well when you had an uncontroversial Indonesian travel log. Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, so this is some of the agency that you give up when you're using a platform like YouTube to monetize your videos. And what you're referring to is it wasn't a controversial video at all, but it was sort of a mistake within YouTube's algorithm. It was actually the video was actually an interview with me and the president of Indonesia. It was a very kind of stand-up video, but their algorithm and the AI behind it misinterpreted what the video was, and therefore they blocked advertisements on it.
So then you had a big loss.
Well, there was a loss, certainly, and I had to appeal that, and YouTube changed it. But I think that this sort of speaks to some of the growing pains that YouTube has experienced when you're looking at a platform that has, I think, nearly 2 billion active users and the amount of content they have. And when you're monetizing on a platform like that, there are sort of standards across the board, and mistakes get made, and ultimately those mistakes can affect the income of the creators on the platform.
So it's a bit crazy because you're quite dependent by these platforms as a creator, unless you, of course, you do your makeup lines and your merchandising. But ultimately, what's your take on that?
Well, I think that the dependency on any one individual income source as someone who works in this influencer universe is a volatile position to be in, because any one of those pillars could kind of fall or stop working at any point in time. Beyond sort of the algorithmic problems that YouTube's had in the past when it comes to putting ads in front of videos, people have also just seen their audiences disappear. Maybe the appetite of your audience decides that they don't want to watch you anymore, and then your income could dry up there. And that's why you're seeing such a diversification now, and such a sophisticated diversification with individuals in this space. That's why they're not just putting themselves on one platform, they're putting themselves on all the platforms. They're not just monetizing their videos, but they're creating merchandise lines, they're working with bigger companies, they're doing branded content.
I'm interested in the branded content, working with companies. When do you turn a deal down? When do you draw a line? Okay, this is not something I want to do.
Well, for me, there are always sort of moral and ethical, invisible guidelines that I give myself. And if the entity that's approaching me doesn't seem like they're ethically or morally aligned with my own morals, then it's an easy no. And I've had a lot of those.
What is a difficult no? Well, can you give an example of someone offering you a lot of money and you said no because?
Well, certainly. I mean, there was a very controversial company, I think a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now, and what they sold were something called mystery boxes. And what it effectively was gambling. By logging onto their service, giving them money, and then picking a box to open. And it was something that young people in particular were very prone to sort of become addicted to.
I remember,
this
influencers showing these kind of
That's boxes. Exactly right. And a lot of my peers in this space sort of took the checks, and it came back to sort of bite them because turned out that it was sort of a fraudulent practice, a lot of controversy around it, and then you had all these creators who had taken money and vouched for this entity that proved to be fraudulent. And I see offers like that frequently. So I'm far more diligent now in who I work with. I'm much more interested in building long-term relationships with companies and brands that I do feel aligned with than I am taking one-off paychecks from any one company.
And if you can give us a range, that's difficult, a price tag,
of what it costs to work with an influencer today. Well, I think that
of your scale.
Sure. I think that if you look at or you hear, whether it's rumor or there's any truth to it, of making selling $20 million worth of product in 1 hour, you start to understand the value and the scale of influencer marketing. So, rates, there are small creators or small individuals on platforms that are seeing $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for an engagement. I know a lot of my peers get low to mid six figures for a single video integration. And then on the highest level are individuals like Shane Dawson or Jeffree Star who are creating their own companies and brands to the tunes of tens of millions. So I think we're at our infancy in this space, and you're going to see those numbers go through the roof once the value of influencer marketing can really be quantified.
Okay. So it might go through the roof even more. You're slowing down a bit. You moved to Los Angeles. You were in New York for a long time, 18 years, I think.
Yeah.
And now you're taking it easy. So less videos, more surfing.
Yeah. Well, look, the tempo of YouTube, the tempo of the social media world, is one where you are relevant today and nobody tomorrow. And that is an exhausting place to live. That's an exhausting place to work in.
So you want to leave it a bit?
Leave it? No, absolutely not. I love it. YouTube is, to me, the greatest thing that's ever happened to the world of cinema. It's enabled an entire generation of creators that otherwise would not be making things, would not be creatively expressing themselves. I'll never leave YouTube. But certainly, I have 2 small children at home right now, and as I've grown up and found some financial security and had kids, my priorities have shifted away from working 20-hour days to turn out a new video every single day to a more sort of responsible schedule.
So less pressure?
The pressure is still there.
For?
To maintain this audience that I've worked so hard to build. I think that any creator who's found success in this world will tell you how much they value the relationship they have with their audience. My audience is paramount to everything I've been able to do. And I love staying in contact with them via the work that I make. So I feel a pressure there, but largely that pressure is self-imposed and a pressure that I welcome and embrace.
What about financial pressure? I mean, you earned a lot of money, but at some point you're 38 and...
Financial pressures, I think, are always there. We're trying to figure out what school my daughter goes to next year. My son is about to graduate college. There are always gigantic unknowns in anyone's future. And I think the challenge for individuals that work in a creative space, for individuals who don't collect a regular paycheck, is to know when saying yes is right and when it's okay to say no.
Then you have an agent who represents you, is
I
that
do.
correct? Caroline Moneta. I was wondering, is this something you need? Because like that you can focus on the creative side and she can focus on the business side?
Yeah, I work with William Morris Endeavor, so that's the agency that I work with. And I haven't always worked with an agent. But when you reach sort of a level where there are so many opportunities or you're facing a lot of opportunities, you need help picking and choosing what are the right ones. And, for me, working with a large agency is just sort of one piece of a larger infrastructure that I've been able to build and work with to aid me in my career.
You had Beam,
That's
an
correct.
app,
Yeah.
which was sold to CNN.
Correct.
It reported for $25 million US. You cannot confirm, right? You cannot, but that's what they reported. And it consists of an app, a team that was creating these news videos addressing a younger audience. And at the end, it was not a match. You left and the app closed.
Yeah, so it was what we had built at Beam was we built a digital product, and we had a couple of digital products that some did really well, some struggled. But I think the most valuable thing that we built was our team. We had an extremely strong software development team that we built in New York City. And I know that was very attractive to Turner, to CNN. My personal influence and the things that I had built on YouTube was something that CNN was very excited about. And I think the relationship was a really prosperous one. I think we did wonderful things together. But yeah, ultimately, I think my co-founder and I sort of struggled to work within the infrastructure of CNN. But
in a corporate. As a creator?
Yeah, I think that going from a startup environment where you're bootstrapping and struggling every single day and there's nothing above you but sky and you're trying to figure things out to then sort of dovetailing with a larger entity is a challenge that sort of any recently acquired startup faces. But my favorite part, the most important thing to me is sort of what CNN was able to do with the team. Which is, build a number of really valuable entities.
They're still there.
They're still there, and they're still doing great work. I'm very, very proud of the work that Beam was able to do with CNN.
So you don't regret that step?
Absolutely not. To me, it was one of the most sort of informing pivot points in my entire career. Plus, I had the opportunity to work with incredible people at CNN that I may not have otherwise had the opportunity to do so.
Then last year you started a project 368, and the mission statement is helping creators climb the ladder to success escalator style.
This is actually a line from a kind of an obscure Biggie Smalls song, but it's totally appropriate. Climb the ladder to success, escalator style.
And you have this studio in New York where you can record podcasts. You have a kitchen for cooking shows. So everything a creator needs nowadays. Is this sort of an incubator?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest inhibitors to success in the world of influence, especially in the world of YouTube, is community. Despite putting yourself out there and sharing yourself and your ideas with millions of people via the platform, it's a very isolating career path. So the idea with 368 is to try to sort of chip away at that isolation by creating a physical space where creators can come, get to know one another, and meet people in real life. And in that regard, we found a lot of success with the company. It's doing really exciting things.
And how does it work? So if a creator wants to use your facilities, they pay?
No, absolutely not. One of our charters is to never take from creators, ever.
Wow. So you have sponsors.
Yeah, so the business of that is that the influencer economy is just something that's growing and growing, and these large businesses are looking for ways to access creators. And beyond sort of the transactional way of working with a creator, we are trying at 368 to create more community-focused ways for brands to work and get to know with creators. And again, finding a lot of success in that space, working with great companies like Adobe and Google, Electronic Arts, and they come in and they get to meet all the creators that we work with on a regular basis, and there's a real relationship there, a real symbiotic relationship between this community and these entities.
Okay, so it brings something back to the brands that are. Do they sponsor the full thing, or are you also financially involved?
No, the company's entirely self-sufficient, financially self-sufficient right now. But the way in which specifically the brands may work with either the company or the individuals, it changes every single time. This is not an institutionalized process yet because we're so early in this space.
So I was wondering, media companies, as we are one too, how can bigger media companies tap into a younger audience? It's quite a challenge.
It's quite a challenge, but I see a lot of success now from the more traditional, slower-moving media companies as they're sort of, up here in the world of media, and now they're starting to sort of dip their toes in new spaces. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at the late-night shows in the United States, they're now seeing viewership of the clips they're putting on YouTube rival or exceed the viewership of their traditional broadcast show.
But the difficulty is to make money out of it still, because a lot of money goes then to Google or to Facebook and not into. I think it's harder.
Well, sure. I think those are problems that are overcomable, and in time, how the bigger brands and bigger companies are able to figure out how to monetize their content on less traditional platforms, it's something that will be solved. That's a solvable problem. But the important thing to your question is, how do they tap into this audience? And I think we're starting to see that happen by going to where the audience already is.
Okay, then Casey, so you're slowing down, but you're actually not inactive. You're working on a movie?
Yeah, I mean, most of my focus right now is on a feature film. So I say slowing down, and I think to my YouTube audience that maybe checks my YouTube channel every day and they only see, 1 or 2 uploads a week instead of 8 uploads a week, it looks like I'm slowing down. But the vast majority of my time now is invested in a larger, much more slow to develop project than just making YouTube videos.
Can you tell us a little bit what it is on? About?
Sure, yeah. It's a feature-length film where I'm trying to examine influencer culture, where I'm trying to examine what it means to be a YouTuber, what it means to be young and be outside of sort of the traditional media sphere, but to have a kind of influence that used to only exist in that larger space. And it's something that I know well, and it's something that I'm hoping to be able to capture in an hour-and-a-half-long movie.
When can we see that?
$1 million question. My goal is to have it be publicly released by next summer.
Do you have someone waiting for it, like
No. This is something. I have a very strong production company that I'm working with, but no, the distribution to this is still up in the air.
Okay, so we might see it on a streaming platform or so.
Who knows?
Okay, great. Well, Casey, Neistat, all the best, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.